Some years back I did a sorta let's play strategy session about Shinobi 3. I went over it stage by stage, giving you an overview and what you would face and what to look out for. While I enjoyed doing that, it was a far cry from my usual review process, and I've decided to remedy that. In this episode, I'm giving Shinobi 3 the full review treatment and let you know what I think and where it stands in the pantheon of greats. Is it the classic you've constantly heard it was, or is it just another action game that's overhyped and shallow as a puddle? Let's find out. Let's begin our review by going back in time and talking a little bit about a company called Whiteboard. Founded in 1985, they began their Sega development by doing the SG-1000 version of Ninja Princess, a port of the arcade game that was known as Sega Ninja in the West. This forged a relationship that begot numerous Master System releases. They were responsible for Great Baseball, Great Golf, Fantasy Zone The Maze, Megumi Rescue, and many others. As the 1980s came to a close, Whiteboard changed its name to Santos and continued working with Sega to port Toki Going Ape Spit and the new property, Battle Golfer Yui. But during this time, Santos was not doing well financially, so Sega acquired a number of its assets and employees at the end of 1991. Santos, or more specifically what was left of it, then entered bankruptcy and was dissolved. Two things then happened beginning in 1992. First, former Santos president Takeshi Tozu formed a new company called Santos that would go on to develop games like the Flintstones for the Sega Genesis and Samurai Showdown for the Game Gear Portable. And second, Sega would take its acquisitions from the original Santos and form a new subsidiary called Megasoft Company Limited. I'm telling you all this because it was Megasoft that would develop Shinobi 3 and release it in 1993. It was not a smooth development, however. It was made over a course of about 18 months and it underwent a ton of changes. In fact, well into development, most of what was done was scrapped and completely redone. So close was it to release in its original state that there were actually magazine reviews out there covering what is clearly a very different game from what we received in the final retail release. The story of Shinobi 3 is a direct continuation of the events from The Revenge of Shinobi. After defeating Neo Zed, our hero Joe Musashi returns to Japan to continue his training. 2 years pass and the remnants of Neo Zed have reformed the organization and this time targets the entire planet. As the Shinobi, your job is to go in, take down the demons that have hatched this insidious plot, and foil the bad guys yet again. The gameplay here continues to build upon what was started in the original arcade Shinobi and the follow-up The Revenge of Shinobi. The core gameplay is mainly platforming. You'll need to traverse many different areas while avoiding the bottomless pits that tend to litter the environment. You have both a standard jump as well as a double jump for increased height and distance. You can also grab ropes, pipes, and ceilings above you, with many stages requiring this for you to get past them. Shinobi also can wall jump to greater heights. By pushing off the walls, you can get the platforms you never could have before. To defend yourself, you are armed with shurikens, or throwing knives, that travel completely across the screen. If you throw your knives during a double jump, you'll do a spread or fan attack of multiple knives capable of hitting more than one target. Up close, you have a sword that can be used to dispatch enemies and used to block attacks. This is perhaps one of Shinobi's most improved gameplay mechanics. While the Shinobi could block in the last game if powered up, here he can do it any time that it's needed by simply holding the attack button. This allows you to block many of the enemy projectiles you'll face. This is a game changer that really adds to the options you have for both the foot soldiers and boss encounters. Also new to your arsenal is a jump kick that targets enemies below you, as well as a running dash that gets you around faster and can quickly close the gap between you and your target. You can attack with your sword out of this run as well, giving it all sorts of tactical uses. No Shinobi adventure would be complete without ninjutsu, or what is ultimately your ninja magic abilities. There's Ikazuchi, which is a thunder shield that allows you to take a few hits without any damage to your life bar. There's Karyu, a vicious whirlwind of fire that damages everything on the screen. There's Fusion, an art that increases Shinobi's jumping abilities. And finally there is Mijin, a self-destructive move that destroys Shinobi and damages everything on the screen. This is a last resort maneuver that does take one of your lives to pull off. Beware, using this while it's 0 extra lives will result in a game over. Fortunately, there are item crates all over each of the stages that you'll be exploring. In these crates, you'll find extra throwing knives, a power-up that increases your attack damage, extra lives, extra ninja magic, and extra health. Be on your guard, however, because sometimes you will get a bomb that can not just explode and damage you, but sometimes even knock out the platform you're standing on. Finally, Shinobi is not on foot this entire adventure. There are stages dedicated to riding a horse and using a jet board. These are auto-scrolling stages that basically keep throwing enemies at you until you get to the end. Being released in 1993 and coming in at a respectable 8 megabits, Shinobi 3 has outstanding visuals with impressive variety. The colors pop in every level, and nothing ever appears washed out or lacking in detail. There are 7 main stages, with each one having sub-areas that often have completely different backgrounds. And speaking of backgrounds, the amount of glorious parallax scrolling here is the stuff of dreams. Every single area, whether indoors or out, has multiple layers whizzing by you, and it looks spectacular. Clouds, trees, rocks, water, you name it, and the depth displayed here adds a huge amount of character to the environments. The enemy sprites look pretty good too, with solid animation and variety. The bosses you will face range from average to impressively intimidating, especially the battle with Met Godzilla and the giant laser-spitting mutant. Joe Musashi himself looks great here, perhaps the best he has ever looked in any of these games. The red and white color scheme contrasts well with each and every background, making sure you never lose your character when the action gets intense. I also love the animation frames he has, from the slow walk when holding your block, to the running dash, right down to the jump kick. Shinobi moves with a finesse befitting his reputation and pedigree. All things considered, it's one of the better looking Genesis games released in its lifetime. It almost felt like this hardware was made to display this type of game. It never slows down either, making it an almost perfect 10 in the graphics department. The only negative I could even begin to level at it is the strange looking mist effect in the trap stage. This false transparency doesn't come off the same as something you would have seen on the Super Nintendo, but honestly, even it has an air of uniqueness about it. It almost shimmers and glows, and if this is the worst thing I can say about the visuals, it just proves you're in for one heck of a treat. Sega's Shinobi series has always sounded great. Whether in the arcades or on its consoles, these titles took advantage of the sound chip to their fullest capabilities. Shinobi 3 is no different in this regard. While some tracks are clearly superior to others, there is not a stinker in the bunch. Every tune fits the stage it's paired with and is strong enough to listen to outside the game. I'm not going to hold back in this segment. I have multiple selections for you to listen to. The critique section here was something I wanted to be really honest about and separate myself as a Sega fan to give you the best possible take on what is, and isn't, so great about Shinobi 3. But to find any real negatives of this title, I would almost need to nitpick it to the point where I'm having to make stuff up to say something bad about it. The truth is, Shinobi 3 is pretty much perfect 16-bit game design. You get a wide swath of moves that really elevate this over the normal stuff you saw at the time. With Shinobi now being able to run, jump kick, grab onto most surfaces, and wall jump, you can approach enemies with a dozen strategies to take them down. I could try and find fault in the stage design, but again, the vast majority of the way this game is set up is exceptional as well. I mean, there are stages that are better than others, but I wouldn't call the weaker ones bad by any means. It's a great mix of horizontal and vertically scrolling areas that test you in different ways. You aren't just flooded with enemies constantly. The stages are as much a challenge to traverse as the enemies are to kill. Later levels like the falling rocks combine both into a vicious cycle where timing and memorization is crucial to success, particularly on the harder settings. Also helping the variety are the vehicle-based stages. Whether it's the horse or the jet board, both these offer up enough differences in how the stage is played and how the enemies approach you that they are welcome breaks from the other free-roaming levels. I also want to praise the final area, which really tests your command over Shinobi's abilities. It starts out with you hanging on for dear life, insta-deaths awaiting every single mistake, before moving on to a challenging game of avoid the electrified floors, walls, and ceilings. Your jumping abilities better be up to snuff. I mean, there is just so little here to really complain about. Maybe it could have had some more weapons, or maybe some magic that differed a bit more from Revenge of Shinobi. Maybe it could have been longer and had a few more stages. But again, that is nitpick territory, because what is here feels so right, so perfectly balanced. That leaves me with one very small complaint about Shinobi 3. The last boss is somewhat underwhelming when you consider the last battle in Revenge of Shinobi. Whereas that was a desperate fight for the survival of your woman, this dude is just a basic encounter that you can simply brute force with your weapons and magic. I didn't expect them to copy Revenge of Shinobi's last fight, but it would have been nice if there was a nuke launch or something you had to disarm that could have led to different endings if you failed. But I want to be clear. This is such a small thing in the grand scheme of how well this game performs in every other area. It's got the looks, the sounds, the gameplay, and the stage design that puts it in the upper echelon of side-scrolling 16-bit action titles. Shinobi 3 isn't just a great Genesis game, it's top 10 material for that entire generation. Looking back at the reviews of Shinobi 3, it's clear that the gaming magazines were just as impressed as I was. Electronic Gaming Monthly raved about it, bestowing it with its coveted Platinum Award, with every editor giving it a 9 out of 10. GamePro lavished it with praise as well, basically saying it was almost perfect and giving it high marks across the board. The reviewers at GameFan were likewise impressed, giving it a great score and calling it a sequel that beat Revenge of Shinobi in every category. And it was all true. Shinobi 3 continued a streak of games in the mainline series where each and every one was a winner. There was Shinobi on the Sega Master System in 1988. There was the Revenge of Shinobi for the Genesis in 1989. Shadow Dancer followed that up on the Genesis in 1990. The GG Shinobi landed on the Game Gear in 1991. With its follow-up, the GG Shinobi 2, appearing a year later in 1992. Then there was Shinobi 3 here in 1993, giving us 6 straight years of 6 incredible games. Unfortunately, Shinobi 3 did not sell as well as Sega had wanted. It was released just a few weeks before Mortal Kombat on the Genesis, and that behemoth soaked up every bit of available market share, moving over 3 million units. Shinobi 3, even with all its potential and good press, was simply no match for the hype and word of mouth generated by countless kids wanting to rip their friends' hearts out or burning them to a crisp. This put Shinobi on shaky ground, and we wouldn't see another one appear on the Genesis despite the platform being officially supported for another 4 years. We did get a two-dimensional Saturn release in 1995, but that was lost in the shuffle with all the hype 3D polygon games were getting. Sales again underwhelmed, and Sega quietly retired the Shinobi franchise until 2002's PS2 adventure. I honestly cannot help but feel Sega really missed an opportunity to bring the Genesis one more Shinobi title in its lifetime. An upgraded remake of the Game Gear titles perhaps. I feel that formula would have worked great and could have led to a more advanced Metroid-style adventure on the Saturn a few years later. This franchise had done so well, had brought so much respect to Sega's consoles, that I really do feel it deserved better. Shinobi 3 had the gameplay, graphics, and sound that showed the Genesis was still a monster, and it could still pump out some of the best experiences you could find on a home console. It's a masterpiece, plain and simple. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.